I think that a lot of practice owners fall into the same trap as most business owners in most industries. And that is, we've all been somehow convinced that business is supposed to be complicated. Kick it.
Welcome to Strata Stories. My name is Thomas Schreiber. I'm the Director of Marketing here at Strata PT. Strata PT combines your EMR and billing into one automated system to increase revenue and achieve a 99.99% reimbursement rate for physical, occupational, and speech therapy clinics. On today's episode, Paul Singh, the CEO of Strata PT, sits down with Adam Robin, a practice owner and business coach. Paul and Adam dissect three common bottlenecks of private practice ownership, which include 1, overscheduling and non-effective patient care delegation, 2, poor sales education and process, and 3, lack of simple, organized, and objective data. If you'd like to learn more about Strata PT and see how our EMR and billing works, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo. Now, without further delay, here's today's episode.
From what I've read about you online, you've built practices, you've sold those practices, and now you got the private practice owners club, which we'll talk about. So I think a great place to start here would be give me the 2-minute, recap of what your business is, what your background is. I know it's hard to capture everything in 2 minutes. Just give me that as a starting point, because I think it'll kick it off real well.
Yeah. So good question. My name's Adam. I'm a physical therapist turned business coach. So I grew up, father was an entrepreneur. He was a plumber, blue collar entrepreneur, no guidance. His strategy was work real hard and shut up and just work harder, right? that was his strategy. So that was my strategy when I started my business. Eventually graduated PT school in 17. Started my practice in 2019. My strategy was work hard, just work hard and treat my patients better than anybody else would. That worked for a little while till I realized that hard work alone wasn't going to work. So I dug myself into a really big hole and a complex mess with my business. Wasn't a big hole, but it seemed big to me at the time, right? And was unhappy, unfulfilled, on everything, just super lost. Hired my first business coach, and everything changed. And so since then, I've opened up 2 more clinics. I haven't sold, so I still own 3 clinics.
Oh, okay, okay.
Partnered up with my original business coach. His name's Nathan Shields. Shout out Nathan. Started Private Practice Owners Club, and we just freaking support the heck out of owners. We're just trying to help people win and help people find freedom in their business.
Okay, so there's a couple ways that we can go on this. I think the first is you talked about this idea of digging yourself into a hole, because I think you alluded to the idea that you made the business more complex than it needed to be. Is there anything you want to share there, by the way? Or if not, we can pass by that. But I thought it was interesting you mentioned something about digging into a hole there.
Yeah, we could totally share. It's fun because it's when I'm doing these podcasts and I'm coaching my team, it's really I'm talking to myself in a lot of ways, my old version of myself. But most practice, and we don't know how to run a business, right? We go to PT school and we don't know what we're doing. We just know how to treat patients and work, right? Where a lot of us are type A. And so those skills and that strategy isn't the thing that qualifies you to grow a business. It's just the thing that qualifies you to maybe be a decent entrepreneur. And so you can make progress in your business. I made progress in my business with that mentality of just work hard, get it done, sacrifice, get it done. But eventually what happens is, as your business grows, as your life grows, the complexity of everything kind of grows, right? And you want to pour into your patients, you want to pour into your team, you want to pour into your family, but the business kind of gobbles you up because it's demanding things that you don't really have or you don't realize you need. And then we get lost, right?
Yep.
And so that's where that's kind of my message. That's kind of the framework that I use to help people see where they might be stuck. But then realizing that there's a different way of doing things. You can do things a little differently, and then you can find more possibility in the business.
Yeah. Well, and this is maybe a good segue into, what I think what I think is going to be really interesting to talk about here as well is that you have this concept of common bottlenecks, and this is probably stuff you're talking about in your practice owners club, private practice owners club. We'll put a link in the show notes. I suck at my words today. But I think actually, let me not. I don't want to steal your thunder. So common
Sure.
bottlenecks. Let's go there because like you're everything you're talking about sort of just aligns so perfectly with where we're going here. So what are the common bottlenecks that you're seeing practice owners hit? And I've got a couple notes when I was looking at your website, just in case you draw a blank or I hit you too hard here. But you talk about these bottlenecks a lot, I think, in your content. So let's dig in there a little bit.
Yeah. So the first thing is very simple. It's time management, right? And I think that's not just true for practice owners, but just any entrepreneur, any business owner. It's like where you place your time and attention, that's where your business is going to grow. That's the thing you're going to move your life and your business in that direction. And what happens is, and this is me talking to myself as I'm debriefing my experience, but also gaining deeper insight as I've worked with more owners, is we're really good at treating patients and we're really good at doing things, but these types of things. But what happens is over time, as the complexity of business grows, we tend to hold on to the things that used to serve us, right? But that no longer are going to get us to the next level. And patient care is really the first big one, right? This idea of like, how do I effectively delegate patient care in a way that I feel confident and that I can step into something new? So we occupy our time with so much patient care that we're not able to actually learn new skills.
Well, yeah. I mean, I again, I've never been a PT or anything like that, but I meet enough of them to know. Like, I think what you're talking about is just overscheduling. They they started the business to kind of like maybe get more for their family or do something for their hometown, whatever it was. It was like a noble cause. And then if they make it through that first phase, they end up with a schedule that's crazier than the one they had when they worked for somebody else. And
Yeah.
now they're too busy to do anything else. But yeah, that's what you're saying, right? Is like they just max out the time and then there's nothing left over to devote to getting to the next level or whatever it might be. So that's the first kind of bottleneck. It
Yeah. And
sounds like.
it's tricky. It's deceiving because in the beginning, we tell ourselves like, hey, the more patients that we see, the more money that we're going to make, the more impact that we're going to make. Right. And so it's like, it's an undercover trap because we approach that thing with tenacity and we tell ourselves, hey, if I just keep working harder on this thing, I'll eventually come out of the hole. But it's really a trap. You're actually digging yourself into a deeper hole. And so
Yeah.
that's where people get stuck. And it's not just that patient care. It could be maybe you've delegated patient care and you need to build leadership on your team, or you need to build out your financial system, whatever it is. The point is that we tend to hold on to things a little too long and we get stuck on the wheel.
Yeah. 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 And then, okay. So and I'm sure we could probably talk about like how to, some maybe ways to like fix that. But before we do that, like one of the other bottlenecks you've kind of mentioned, and I don't know if this is like language that I pulled from your site somewhere or not, but the bottleneck number two is, it seems like, is not being involved in the sales process. Can you talk about that? What does that mean?
So the fallacy number two is we all just need more new patients. It's the biggest lie that we're told.
Come on, Adam. That's what everybody told me is the secret. I just need more new patients.
If I just got more new patients, more leads, then I would make a bunch of money and then my life would be amazing. Right.
Right.
And there is some validity to that. I'm not saying that marketing is not an important thing, but the truth is, in my experience, just hasn't been the reality of the things that I've seen. The truth is there's really an abundance of opportunity. There's a lot of people in your phone and on your Facebook page right now who could use your service. There are people who know who you are. Physicians know who you are, right? And so bringing more awareness to what you do in your place is usually not the challenging thing. It's really this idea of how do I take all of those eyeballs and convert them into paying customers? How do I convert them into paying customers? So like if you are a decent salesman, you could probably pull up your iPhone and you've got, I don't know, 3,000 people on your phone. There's probably 100 of them that could be your patient tomorrow if you just knew how to convert them, right? So most people feel like they need more leads, but really it's a conversion issue that they're getting stuck
Yeah.
at.
Well, I mean, I'm saying this assertively, but you would know better than me. I think there's like an aversion to talking about sales of any sort. I think a lot of people, at least in the subset of what I've seen over the last couple of years, is like a lot of these startup practices, they did everything by the book. They leased the space or they bought the van, they got the credentials, they did the licenses, they did all those things. And then they sit there and they're like, okay, so where did the customer, I thought customers would just come to me or patients would come to me. and
Yeah, if I just go get
you know,
another certification, then that will
right,
prove my worth, right? And
right.
then patients, right? And and again, I'm talking to myself because for those who will listen to this, like I study you guys, I understand the way you think, I understand the way that I thought, and what I realized is that's not really; those are some external things that aren't going to really move the needle for you.
Yeah.
But really, once we start understanding like who we are and what we do, and started putting language to how we can add value to others in a way that inspires them to join your program or to enroll into your clinic.
Well, I have a
That's
personal
the
story
thing.
on this too that I didn't really think about until you just said that. But like so I do a lot of running, right? And so I went in to go see a PT recently. My left knee or something was bothering me, and so he says plan of care is going to be 6 visits. And I'm like, yeah, cool. You're right across the street from my kid's school, no big deal, right? And probably on like the fifth visit or something like that, one of my kids was sick, and so I like called the office. I'm like, hey, listen, I'm not coming in today. And they're like, yeah, cool. So later that evening, I get a phone call, not from the front desk, but from the clinician that I was seeing. And this is interesting, like when you talk about like language and things like that. Um, he calls and he says, "Hey man, I saw you didn't make it in today. Everything good?" And I'm like, "Yeah. My daughter's sick." And he's like, "All right, cool. So pull up your calendar. Let's figure out when to make this up." And like I got 4 kids, man. I'm like juggling they're hungry. I got to go to bath time, whatever. And I was like, "Hey man, can I just call you in the morning?" Like I just right in the middle of this. And he was so cool about it. He's like, "Yeah, totally. Call me back tomorrow morning." He said, "But just heads up, you told me you wanted to do this marathon in March. If we don't finish this plan, I can't look you in the eye and tell you that I think you're going to be able to finish that well. So just call me back tomorrow." And at that point, I'm like, "Oh shit, yeah, this is important to me actually." Okay, hang on. Let me open up my calendar, right? And maybe I'm just like a one-off, but that's like a example, I think, of what you're saying, which is like learn to talk. It's like we always talk about what I hear PTs always talk about is better patient outcomes, but I think they're coming at it from a medical sense. Like I don't know medically what's supposed to happen to my knee, but I know the outcome I want. I want to be able to do that thing.
Right. Right.
And so maybe this guy, I'm wondering, like, I wonder what training they do at that little local PT place to make that happen. Maybe he was lucky. That's just how he talks, but I got to believe there was probably some training in that. Um,
Yeah, that
so,
sounds
but
like a
you,
good salesman, honestly.
yeah, right. And right, but nobody talks like that. Like nobody talks about the act of learning that or training that. Um, but I think it's a good point, right? And then like one of the other things I lifted again, I can't remember if we lifted this from the website or if it was something in one of your pieces of content, but it seems like the third bottleneck is data, objective data.
Yeah, data's a
You've
big one
kind of,
too.
can you talk about that? Like, what does that mean?
Yeah, so what happens is what I love about our profession is that we're so emotionally involved in our patients with our patients, right? It's like people like us because we listen, we have a lot of empathy, but your business doesn't care about your feelings. Unfortunately, they don't care if you're having a good day, they don't care if you're having a bad day. It just is, right? And
Yep.
so the language that your business understands is metrics, is numbers. And we tell ourselves, and it's a very cold, objective space that we don't naturally fall into because we tell ourselves that that's mean, that's cruel, right? And so we have a hard time talking the language of the business. So helping owners
Yep.
step out of that emotional decision making framework and into that objective framework to where they understand how the decisions they're making are impacting the bottom line very, very cleanly. When we can do that, then it's like the path becomes a lot more clear.
Right. It's like, it's, well, actually, let me pause because I'll take you down a path. This is probably not useful here for this conversation, but I couldn't agree more with you there. By the way, because like there's a lot of romance sometimes in the business, and this is not just unique to the PT world. Like this is almost every industry. You can find people, especially at the earlier stages of business, that kind of view the revenue and the profitability of their business through like like a romantic lens, like it's just going to work out, it's going to be fine. But at some point, especially when you got other people on your payroll, you got to like really take the rose colored glasses off and get serious about it. Like, am I underbilling for these visits? Is that a training issue? Am I accepting the wrong insurance? Was 100% cash pay a bad idea because I live in an area that can't support that, like, at some point you got to have that objective conversation that probably wasn't had. So, uh, the three bottlenecks we sort of talked about so far, just as a recap, is like this concept of overscheduling, this concept of, sales or getting comfortable with sales. And then the third bottleneck being this objective data. Um, I can kind of just connecting the dots here as we talk, I can see how they're intertwined, but what's the right way to like start it, like maybe talking about how to get past these? So like, let's just say somebody's listening to this from Michigan and they're like, man, this all makes sense, but um, I don't know. I'm doing 40 visits a week myself. There's no time in the day left for anything else. How do you solve that bottleneck? Do you tell them to schedule less? Like, I know that, by the way, I know this is a fake scenario, right? Because the answer is it depends. But just for the sake of like, conversation, maybe like somebody's sitting there in Michigan or Utah and they're like, oh, man, I'm already overscheduled. How do I fix this?
Yeah.
What do you, what's like, what's your thought framework, or how do you advise them?
Yeah. Good question. So I used to think that growing a business is a game of just doing more stuff. Do more stuff. If I can add more to my plate, then I will create more stuff, right? And reality is nothing really changed for me until I recognized that the plate is only so big,
Yep.
and that in order to add something, you have to remove something first,
Okay.
right? So step one is not
This is about to
necessarily
get uncomfortable. I love it.
step one isn't defining what you should be doing. Step one is defining what should you let go of, right? When you're feeling that pain or that discomfort in your business, that is the universe telling you that you are holding on to something that no longer serves you. So developing some strategies, some thinking tools to help you audit your calendar and audit your to-do list, and actually putting a rating score on those things like, hey, is this a high leverage task? Is this a low leverage task? Or is this a medium leverage task? So getting, again, out of the emotional framework of what we're doing and getting more objective about what we're doing, and then creating some delegation or automation frameworks to open up more bandwidth on your calendar. That is the thing.
Yeah.
That bandwidth is the room you need to step into something new,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
Whether
Yep.
that's learning how to market, learning how to hire, learning how to run your numbers, or learning how to learn sales. You first have to create the space so then you can move, right? And you gotta understand that principle, and you gotta believe it, and you gotta have the courage to follow it.
It's I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, if you want to fix it, step number one is clear the plate a little bit, make
Gotta
some
clear the
room.
plate. You can't hold the biggest challenge that we have in that, the way I like to frame it up is, you're keeping 100 balls in the air, but there's probably 97 of them that you could let drop and you'd still be okay.
Yep.
And
Yep. Yep.
that's
Yep.
called making a hard decision. And like, welcome to being a business owner. There's only so many resources that you have, and your job is to become strategic about where you're placing your resources. And in this case, we're talking about your time and your energy.
Is there like is there like a rule of thumb that you recommend? And maybe the answer is no, but like, let's just say somebody were to jump on this call right now and be like, man, I'm overscheduled or whatever, right? Is there a percentage of time or some benchmark you recommend, like where you're like, hey, that's too much?
I think it depends on the size of your business in a lot of
Yeah.
ways. So early on, so like our goal with our clients is, if very on a very low end, the clients that join our program have 3 people on their team. That's the and so our requirement is that you must be committed to it, blocking off at least 4 hours a week during the week, Monday through Friday, not on the weekends, not after work,
Yeah.
not at lunch, right?
Yeah.
During the week, and we put you through our framework to show you how to create that space. But as your team grows and as your revenue grows, as the complexity of your business grows, that will go from 4 to 8 to 16 to
Yeah.
there. So
Yeah.
4 hours a week minimum.
Yeah. Yeah.
Minimum.
That's cool. That's cool. Okay, so scheduling, I mean, that's really, you got to clear the plate, right? So if you're overscheduled, you got to clear the plate. When you talk about like, the sales process, what how does that look like? How does that look with you guys? Like, do you guys like, uh, Jerry Durham, who's been on our show quite a bit, Jerry Durham says he like secret calls the practice, and with their permission, he like secret calls the practice and records the session again with everybody's permission, and then uses that to sort of deconstruct how to coach people, based on like real world examples. Hey, you said this when what you probably should have said is that. How do you guys think about that? Like it's one thing to say, hey, you need to be more involved in sales. You need to kind of think of more salesy things to do. But like for people, for example, that are in the practice owners club with you guys, uh, again, I know there's no one size fits all solution, but how do you guys think about training the sales side of this for practice owners?
It's a good question. So the first step with anything, in my opinion, is education.
Yeah.
Education will be the thing that turns on the lights and helps you gain perspective on what your options might be, right? So if your idea of sales is like be nice, you don't know anything about sales, right? Like so like what we need to do is actually start consuming quality information to turn the lights on for you so that you can start creating language around the sales process. What is a sale? What is a pain point? What is a desire? What's the emotional buy-in? How do we do those things, right? What's a conversion rate?
Yep.
And once you're equipped with that language, and then by the way, like equip that with your team, like let them read those same things.
Right. Right.
Then you can start having a conversation about what sales is. We have to define it. That's the first step, right? So first step is defining it. Learn some techniques would be step two. And that's going to be like scripts, like Jerry was talking about, role playing, right? And then the third, like kind of going into step three would be like to actually practice. I'd recommend practicing with your team and not on your patients, right?
I was
Practice,
talking to my yeah.
review the calls, role play, that type of thing.
I was talking to one of my nephews is like 17, 18 years old, and he's got one of his first jobs. He's actually selling cars at a small car dealership, whatever. And so I was talking to him the other day. I was like, "Hey, so what's that like? In full disclosure, like one of my earliest jobs before entrepreneurship and all that, I sold cars at CarMax way, way back in the day. Um, so we kind of have that common connection. I was like, "Hey, so what's that like?" And he goes, yeah, Uncle Paul, like they just told me to go in, like the first day they were like, yeah, just go in the bathroom and don't come out until you can say the price of the car without, you know,
Looking at it.
blinking, you
Yeah.
know. And I was like, okay, cool. So do you understand why they did that? And he was like, I don't know, like what, you know how you talk when you're 17, 18, you don't really know,
Sure.
right? But I was trying to help him. I was like, they're doing it because like, sometimes you haven't even seen like a $30,000, you don't know how to say 30, hey, this is worth 30 grand or that's worth 40 grand. And you gotta like start by getting comfortable with normalizing, and so now he probably doesn't get that. It'll take a long time. It's all of us old guys probably, you know, we're all slow learners anyway. But I think that's what you're talking about here is like you kind of have to like, I guess let me say it a different way. If you can embrace the idea, if somebody listening to this right now can embrace the idea that you are in a sales profession that happens to
Correct.
deliver healthcare, if you're already at that place where you can agree with that, then you kind of have to come to terms with the fact that you probably have to do the same things that people at car dealerships do or salespeople at technology companies do. And that is you're role playing every week. You're breaking down um, recaps of failed sales from the prior week, and you're practicing because the goal here isn't to like swindle somebody. The goal is to like
Exactly.
make sure you understand how to react in certain situations. But not very many practice owners do this. Again, everybody's full of excuses. Here's the incendiary thing I would say, and you probably have way more data points than me. I think from what I've learned about this industry, and I will caveat this by saying it's no different than a lot of other industries. And that is that most business owners across most industries are better at finding 87 things that can go wrong when instead they should be focusing on the one thing they should do right to just keep chipping away at things. So in the context of sales, the one thing you can probably do is think about like sales training, or
Learn and
even if you don't
train.
think it, yeah, even if you don't think about it that way, it's like maybe just being honest with, you don't have to be honest with me or you, but at least be honest with yourself about why a particular patient didn't finish their plan of care. Most people don't even do that, right? They'll be like, "Oh, like they got busy or whatever." Like nobody wants to have that conversation. Um, so anyway, so like we talk about the sales piece, objective data. Like what
Mm,
what does that look like? I mean, we don't have to talk about specific products or anything like that, but like what reports, I mean, maybe is this a fair question to ask? Like, regardless of what products they're using, are there certain reports you recommend at different stages for somebody to be looking at? Like, is there anything that you guys talk about there when we talk about the concept of objective data?
yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure the goal is to measure as little as you possibly can, right? But also
That's the dream. Yeah.
you want to measure things that help you, that are directly tied to the decisions that you want to make.
Well, yeah, I call it vanity metrics. Like what's worse than having no metrics is just having what I call vanity metrics. They're
Correct.
just
Get this
metrics that
huge,
like,
complicated dashboard that
right.
you never look at, right? So it's like, let's start with really basic things like, how much money did you make last month? How much did you spend? If you take
Yep.
that and
Yep.
you minus that, you get profit. Okay, that's
Well, there you
called
go. That's called your street MBA. That's all you need. It's a street MBA right there. Yeah.
And if you make that a percentage, that's called your profit margin, right? Okay, great. How did we get there? What were some of the things that correlated to that? Well, obviously the number of visits that you saw, the number of units that you build, right? And that's
What
going to be
payers you accepted.
what payers you accept, right? So it's like, what's the information that you need? It's kind of like going down a rabbit hole, right? It's like, let's understand this. Here's the thing. We as business owners lose a lot of sleep at night because we're worried and because we're in the dark. And the recipe to that is your knowingness, right?
Yeah.
Your
Yep.
understandingness, right? We all know that the sun's coming up tomorrow because we've proven it. We've got scientists who've calculated that. And like, we don't go to sleep at night thinking, oh my God, what if the sun doesn't come up tomorrow? It's because we know it. We trust it. The recipe for stepping off the emotional roller coaster is understanding objectively about your business, the model of your business, so that you can make clear, conscious decisions. And that'll be the thing that allows you to step into boldness and powerfulness and be like, I'm really excited about what we're doing. I'm optimistic because I know what levers to pull, right?
Yep.
I know how to
Yep.
create more value in this company now, right? So that's I know that's not like a direct answer. So like the short answer is simple decisions and just dedication. Like you got to get in the habit of committing to it.
Yeah. 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 Absolutely. I think like in that context, by the way, like in by the way, in all fairness to you too, if there truly was one objective set of metrics that truly mattered, then we'd all have the same playbook. All of us would just publish the same little PDF. Hey, here's the scorecard. But the truth is, there's probably 17 different metrics that 17 different combinations of three core metrics that could truly matter. And the point here is that what's worse than having no metrics is having vanity metrics. And what's worse than both of those things is, you know, convincing yourself that somehow your business is so special that it can't possibly need any metrics or anything like that. So like, I mean, even when I think about it, I was just talking about this with somebody else the other day. I had some private equity guy ask me like, "Hey, so how many accounts you have?" And I was like, I have no idea. And at first I think he thought I was lying, and I was like, "No, I literally don't know. I'm sure somebody on our team knows, but I don't know." And then I could see on this video call like he's weirded out now because now like and I was like, "So just say the thing. What are you thinking?" And he's like, "Well, I thought you're supposed to know your numbers." And I was like, "No, I know my numbers. My numbers are just different than your numbers." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, um, I can go look at the P&L and all those things, but even then, account numbers aren't going to be on there." I said, "Ultimately, here's the thing. It's really about number of patients, visits, and units across our entire platform. That's all I care about. Those are the three numbers I look at. I mean, they're literally up on this other screen scrolling in real time. That's what I'm always watching. That's the proxy of health. If something's off with those numbers, I'll dig and go find what's going on. But like, those are the numbers that work for me." And in your context, right? It's like I was talking to another practice owner this morning, and just out of the blue, we were having a different conversation about something else. He just said, "Hey man, out of curiosity, like, and he owns like a bunch of practices in Arkansas." And I was like, "Hey, so just out of curiosity, like, what are the 3 or 5 metrics you look at religiously every day? Like, just high level." And he wasn't so far off of what you said. He's like, he looks at like his cash account and how much cash he's got in the bank every morning. He looks at the no-show rate across all of his clinics the day before. He listed off these 3 or 5 things, and he's like, "Yeah, I just watch those every day." And they get like and he said, this is his voice. He goes, "They give me a pretty good pulse of how the last 24 hours went. I know I'll get a full report from all of my GMs and stuff like that every Monday morning, but you know, today is a Wednesday morning. He goes, yeah, but on a Wednesday morning, I just go look at the snapshot of these key 5 numbers or whatever from yesterday, and that tells me whether I got to go dig or if I'm good and I don't have to be anxious until next Monday.
Yeah.
And that works for him. But I guess again, the key thing here is just to have an opinion on this thing. What are the 3 things you think that matter? And then it's just you got to be totally unromantic about it. It's so simple. It's like counterintuitive. I think I'm trying not to get philosophical. I think that a lot of practice owners fall into the same trap as most business owners in most industries. And that is, we've all been somehow convinced that business is supposed to be complicated. We've all been convinced of this somehow. Like nobody ever said this to us. There's no like business class that says, welcome to class. Just so you know, the syllabus is going to convince you that business is complicated. Um, so we end up like doing busy stuff and all this other stuff. So I think it's really important to understand, like, really just you just need to break it down to being something simple. Like what like in this case, like to your point, the how much revenue did you make last month, right? That's the trailing indicator of probably a couple key leading indicators in the prior calendar month. You pick what those key ones are depending on your mix, right? Like I would say it's patients, visits, units personally, because that right there will tell you where to dig next. Well, if patients are down from last month, okay, well, what's up? Was it just a
Revenue's
shorter
down,
calendar? Yeah,
right?
right. It's like, now, did that happen because it's the month of December and, because of the way the dates fell between Thanksgiving and Christmas, like, you just had nobody working at the clinic, or maybe the patients were out. I don't know, right? Or maybe patients went down because you do a lot of pediatric work with a local school system, and hey, by the way, it's summer. Patients aren't coming in. So this, right? But it's
Yeah.
like it's getting patient owners to really connect the dots here, because once we know what the numbers look like, whatever numbers you choose, everything else sort of is manageable. Like you can kind of engineer your way around it. Um, by the way, I think this is going to be like a really like punchy episode. We're going to put a bunch of links in the show notes here. Obviously we're going to put in the private practice owner's website, maybe your LinkedIn as well. But if people want to like contact you after this, what's the best way for them to reach out? Is it through the website, LinkedIn DM, something else?
Yeah, if you go to ppoclub.com, there's a button up there to send a message. That'll come straight to my phone. You can text me directly. You can also email me, adam@ppoclub.com. And listen, I tell people all the time, like I get on calls all the time. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here to support the heck out of you. You know, I don't charge anything for those calls. It's just like whatever I can do to support you or connect you with somebody in my network, I'm happy to do that.
I love it, man. I love it.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Strata Stories. Strata PT combines your EMR and billing into one automated system to increase revenue and achieve a 99.99% reimbursement rate for physical, occupational, and speech therapy clinics. If you'd like to learn more about Strata PT and see how our EMR and billing services work, head over to stratapt.com to book a demo.